Good evening, and welcome to the Late Night Record Review. I'm glad you're here. Tonight I'm doing something a little bit different. Using a different mic, for one thing. Headphones being a little more into it. This week marks the birthday of John Lennon. He would have been 78, and tonight I thought we would talk about probably his most famous album. It certainly contains his most famous song, Imagine. This week they also re-released Imagine as a 2 LP special remixed edition. It contains the 2018 remix of the actual album, and then disc 2 has demos and different takes of the album itself too. Nice packaging, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. If you pick up the CD or listen to the MP3, there are a lot more tracks given, a lot more demos. It's very interesting to hear the album play out in the direction that John was taking it, from initial demos to the final product. I've always been a fan of John Lennon. I always admired not only his work, but I found him very interesting as a person. He was deeply flawed, yet in the midst of his flaws, tried to do positive things. And I think Imagine represents John Lennon at his best and worst. And what I mean by that is you have a gamut of emotions coming off this album. From hope to anger to jealousy, love, protest, questioning. And in this 30-minute plus album, you get a lifetime of emotions. And that's what I love about John Lennon, is that he is incredibly real. And it is hard to find people that are real, for right or wrong, that are okay with being themselves, who they are. That understand that they may be criticized, that people may not like them, that what they do or say may be rejected, but that they continue, that they keep moving forward with either their project, their art, their music, or just who they are in general, and not allowing people in society to bring you down, take you out, stop you. And I think that was John Lennon. if you look at the history, 1971 is when the album came out. Beatles are broken up. They've already gone to court. McCartney won his court case as far as the dissolving of the partnership. You see Lennon out there fighting for peace, but also very angry. Angry at McCartney, angry. Almost seemed angry at the world. Which, to be fair, there is some understanding to that. He, because of his relationship with Yoko Ono, did get a lot of flack, as she did as well, from fans, papers, even at times other Beatles. But John opens this song called Imagine. And we all have heard this song 100 times on the radio. But when you listen to the lyrics, he speaks of imagine that there's no religion, that there's no hatred, that there's a brotherhood of people, of man. So there's this hopeful, optimistic view of John. And to be fair, Yoko as well. John, towards the end of his life, later said that he had regretted not including her in the songwriting credits. Mainly because he had certainly been influenced by her poetry. But at the time he said he was egotistical and did not put her on there. Which I believe she's officially listed on the credits now. Again, John, 10 years later, coming back, or 9 years, and saying, I was wrong, I should have done it differently. It's a realism about him. You follow into the next song of Crippled Inside, where kind of this rocky, country-ish sounding song, talking about you can outwardly look a certain way, but it doesn't matter when you're crippled inside. John was doing therapy, primal scream therapy at the time, or it just ended it. A lot of it, from what I've read, dealing with the death of his mother, whom died very early, just after he got to know her again. Which I think left him very bitter and crippled inside. Again, John showing that he could disassemble himself, that he could pull himself apart and put himself back together again. Jealous Guy, which, interestingly enough, started out in 1968 as a song called Child of Nature. The backstory to that is that him and McCartney were attending a lecture by the Maharishi in India about Mother Nature's son. Well, both of them were influenced by this, and we both know what McCartney ended up writing. And John, in turn, wrote Child of Nature to the tune of Jealous Guy, which would become Jealous Guy. Again, showing John's insecurities as in his relationship with Yoko. Fearful of being left, fearful of being alone, not loved. It's So Hard. It's probably my least favorite song on the album. However, it and I Don't Want to Be a Soldier both have saxophone in it, in which the late King Curtis played on that. And King Curtis gained notoriety for playing saxophone on the Coasters' Yakety Yak way back when. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier is probably one of my more favorite songs on the album. It's dark. It's angry. And it comes at you like a wave. Phil Spector is one of the producers of the album. And this song exemplifies the idea of the wall of sound because it's big. And it's, I believe, only about 28 words in the song. But it just grabs you, and you can't help but picture those times of Vietnam, the protests, you can't help but picture the protests of Vietnam when you listen to this song. It is Lennon at his political finest here. Flipping the album over, we go to Give Me Some Truth. This song, I think, still can relate to current political landscapes as it did at that time. 1971, you had Richard Nixon in the White House. He was not well liked by the younger generation because of his push and involvement with Vietnam. The lyric I love is how he uses the line, short-haired, yellow-bellied son of Tricky Dick. Again, John was master of verbal sparring, and I love that about him. He was quick-witted and unafraid to voice his opinion. Oh My Love, a song that he had written after his primal scream therapy. So you go from Give Me Some Truth, where he's shouting his anger, to Oh My Love, where he is quietly expressing his love for Yoko Ono. The chording is actually fairly similar to Julia, which obviously was a song dedicated toward his mother. Finally, we come to How Do You Sleep? The ultimate dig at McCartney. So much so that when Ringo visited during the session, he actually said to John, "That's enough." He was upset by it. John basically opens the song up with a very similar sound as Sgt. Pepper opened up the kind of background noise, instrument warming up, and immediately jumps into the line, "So Sergeant Pepper took you by surprise." So immediately we know we're digging into Beatle history. But John did not hold back in this song, calling McCartney's music Muzak, asking, hadn't you learned anything through all those years? Saying that he jumped when his mother told him so. The only thing he did was yesterday. I can imagine for McCartney that was kind of hurtful, though he did initiate some of the finger pointing and towards John and Yoko through his album Ram and through a couple of photos of him and Linda with, I believe, clown makeup or mask wrapped in a bag. So Paul wasn't exactly innocent. George plays slide guitar on this, and if you've ever watched the movie Imagine, you get to see them doing one of the takes there at Tittenhurst, Lennon's home and studio. Lennon later came back and said that song was about him, himself, and that him and Paul were good. How can I go forward when I don't know which way I'm facing? We see a vulnerable John here, and I love the vulnerability to it. Because again, as I've said before, this makes John human. And sometimes, with certain artists, it's tough to tell. If they're human, it's tough to tell. Aside from their lyrics, what they are feeling. But John wore it all on his sleeve. And I love artists who wear their emotions on their sleeve. The song wraps up, or the album wraps up with Oh Yoko. And I love this song. I love this song. Aside from it being on the Rushmore soundtrack, which is one of my favorite movies. This is the first time that John plays harmonica since he played on Rocky Raccoon. Sadly, this will also be the last time he plays harmonica on a recorded album. This song comes from 1968 as well. During India, he began writing this song. When it was recorded, EMI wanted to make it a single, but John did not want to, feeling that it was too pop. By today's standards, it's far from being pop. But in any case, it's a wonderful song. Taking a look at the album cover itself, as I said, this is the 2018 remix that they just released. The photo is a Polaroid that was taken by Andy Warhol. And on the flip side, you actually, down here, see a little poem. Imagine the clouds dripping. Dig a hole in your garden to put them in. Yoko, 63. As with the original, 2 postcards were put in. One being John holding a pig in reference to Paul's Ram cover. And another, John and Yoko. This is of course, replica of the original 71 release. Includes lyrics and then performers, musicians that were on each track. The second LP has, again, the musicians listed on here, as well as a little bit of history and info. And then finally, a poster was included. Which is pretty good sized. And I believe this poster was also a part of the original packaging in 71. I want to thank you for joining me tonight as we've talked about John's Imagine album and the gamut of emotions that we find it holds. It's definitely an album worth owning. It's definitely an album that I would consider a part of one's music education, as it shows so much humanity within each song. As always, please leave a comment if you like, or a recommendation for an album. Perhaps. Again, I thank you.